Maya Chen stared at the holographic acceptance letter floating above her desk, its golden text shimmering in 3 languages she couldn't read, and one she could barely believe. The Galactic Synthesis Academy had accepted her application. Her hands trembled as she reached out to touch the projection, watching her fingers pass through the congratulatory message that would change her life forever. The Academy was legendary throughout the known galaxy. Only the most brilliant minds from each species were invited to attend, and graduation guaranteed a position among the galactic elite. Scientists, diplomats, military strategists, and technological innovators all traced their success back to those hallowed halls orbiting the neutral moon of Synthesis Prime. But Maya had a secret that could destroy everything. She was human. The Terran Accord had been expelled from galactic society 3 decades ago after what historians called the Prometheus incident. Humanity's reckless experimentation with forbidden technologies had nearly torn a hole in space-time itself, threatening not just Earth but 17 neighboring systems. The Galactic Council had voted unanimously to quarantine the Sol system, cutting off all communication and trade. As far as the galaxy knew, humans were dangerous primitives who couldn't be trusted with advanced technology. Maya had been born on a smuggler's ship in the Outer Rim, her parents refugees who had escaped Earth just before the quarantine took effect. She'd grown up hiding her heritage, learning to modify her appearance and mimic the mannerisms of other species. Her adoptive family on the colony world of New Kepler had registered her as a hybrid Centaurian vegan, a rare but plausible combination that explained her unusual features. Now, at 22, she had somehow managed to fool the Academy's admission committee. Her test scores in theoretical physics and xenobiology had been unprecedented, but she'd attributed her success to her hybrid vigor and unconventional upbringing. The truth was far more complex. Humans, it turned out, had certain advantages that other species lacked. While most galactic races had evolved specialized intelligence, humans possessed what researchers had once called adaptive cognition. They could think in ways that seemed impossible to other species, making intuitive leaps that even advanced AI found difficult to replicate. This flexibility had made them both innovative and unpredictable, leading to breakthroughs that advanced civilization and disasters that threatened it in equal measure. Maya's acceptance letter included travel arrangements to Synthesis Prime, but first she would need to pass through customs at the galactic hub station orbiting Kepler's star. Her forged identity documents had worked for years on the Outer Rim, but the hub station employed the most advanced scanning technology in known space. If they discovered her true nature, she wouldn't just be expelled from the Academy. She'd likely face imprisonment or worse. The next morning, Maya packed her few belongings into a standard travel case. Her adoptive parents, Zell and Thyra, watched with a mixture of pride and worry. They had known her secret from the beginning, taking her in when her birth parents died in a transport accident. Both were retired researchers who had worked with humans before the quarantine, and they understood the risk Maya was taking. "Remember," Zell said, his elongated Centaurian features creased with concern, "confidence is key. You've been living this identity for years. Don't overthink it." Thyra, whose vegan heritage gave her pale blue skin and large dark eyes, handed Maya a small data chip. "Emergency contacts and a clean exit strategy. If anything goes wrong, use this and disappear. The Rim worlds are vast enough to hide in." Maya hugged them both, knowing she might never see them again. "I have to try. If I can prove that humans can be trusted, maybe someday the quarantine will be lifted." The journey to the hub station took 3 days aboard a commercial transport. Maya shared a cabin with a young Zelani engineer and a middle-aged Thrakari merchant, both of whom seemed excited about their own journeys to the inner systems. She practiced her cover story during casual conversations, refining the details of her supposed hybrid heritage. The Zelani, whose crystalline exoskeleton caught and refracted light in beautiful patterns, was particularly curious about Maya's background. "I've never met a Centaurian vegan hybrid before," she said during their second day of travel. "Your cognitive patterns are fascinating. You think in such unusual ways." Maya forced a smile. "My parents always said I got the best of both species. And the worst of neither, apparently. Your test scores for the Academy were remarkable. I heard they broke several records. This was dangerous territory." Maya changed the subject, asking about the Zelani's own research into crystalline computing matrices. But she filed away the information that her test scores had attracted attention. She would need to be even more careful at the academy. The hub station appeared on their view screen like a massive metal flower, its petals stretching across hundreds of kilometers. Ships from dozens of species docked at its various arms, while the central core housed the administrative and commercial districts. Maya had seen images before, but the reality was overwhelming. Millions of beings from across the galaxy lived and worked here, representing nearly every known sentient species, except humans. As their transport docked, Maya felt her heart rate increase. The next few hours would determine her fate. She joined the queue for customs processing, her forged documents uploaded to her personal datapad. The line moved slowly, giving her time to observe the security procedures. Each traveler stepped into a scanning booth that analyzed everything from DNA to brain patterns. Maya watched as a Mordian merchant was pulled aside for additional questioning, apparently flagged for some minor discrepancy in his travel history. The efficiency was impressive and terrifying. When her turn came, Maya stepped into the booth with practiced confidence. Lights flickered around her as sensors analyzed her modified appearance. Her parents had done good work with the genetic masking treatments, altering her skin tone and eye shape to match her cover identity. More sophisticated scans might detect the modifications, but customs was primarily looking for weapons and contraband. The scanner hummed for what felt like an eternity. Maya kept her breathing steady, thinking about her cover story and the life she had built on New Kepler. She was Kira Veltar, hybrid student accepted to the galaxy's premier academic institution. She belonged here. The booth chimed softly and turned green. "Welcome to Hub Station Central, Citizen Veltar," an automated voice announced. "Proceed to Gate 77 for transport to Synthesis Prime." Maya stepped out of the booth, her legs unsteady with relief. She had passed the first test. Now came the real challenge: surviving the academy itself while hiding among the galaxy's brightest minds. As she made her way through the station's corridors, surrounded by species she had only read about in textbooks, Maya couldn't help but smile. She was going to become the first human to attend the Galactic Synthesis Academy in over 30 years. The galaxy was about to discover what humanity could really accomplish when given the chance. The transport to Synthesis Prime was unlike anything Maya had ever experienced. The sleek vessel carried only academy-bound students, creating an atmosphere of nervous excitement and intellectual competition. Maya found herself seated between a young Altarian with shifting, chromatic skin and a hegemony-born Keth whose multiple arms were constantly in motion as he manipulated holographic equations in the air. "First year?" the Altarian asked, her skin cycling through shades of blue and purple that Maya recognized as curiosity mixed with anxiety. "Yes, studying advanced theoretical physics with a focus on space-time mechanics," Maya replied, sticking to her planned responses. The Keth's four eyes all focused on her simultaneously. "Ambitious. I heard this year's theoretical physics program only accepted 12 students galaxy-wide. You must be exceptional." Maya felt a familiar flutter of nervousness. Standing out was the last thing she wanted to do, but her test scores had apparently made that impossible. "I've always been interested in how the universe works at its most fundamental level." As they talked, Maya learned more about her fellow students. The Altarian Zara was studying xenobiology and cultural integration. The Keth, Professor Vex's grandson apparently, was following family tradition in gravitational engineering. Others nearby were discussing advanced mathematics, quantum consciousness studies, and something called reality anchoring that Maya had never heard of. The academy came into view gradually, appearing first as a distant point of light that slowly resolved into an impossible structure. Synthesis Prime orbited a carefully maintained artificial moon, but the academy itself seemed to float freely in space. Geometric buildings connected by flowing bridges created a three-dimensional campus that spiraled outward from a central spire, reaching toward the stars. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Zara said, her skin now displaying patterns of gold and silver. "My grandmother attended here 60 years ago. She said the architecture was designed to inspire students to think beyond conventional limitations." Maya stared at the approaching academy, understanding for the first time the magnitude of what she was attempting. This wasn't just a school. It was a symbol of galactic cooperation and advancement, representing everything humanity had been denied access to for 3 decades. The docking procedure was smooth and efficient. Students were processed through another checkpoint, though this one seemed more focused on academic credentials than security. Maya's forged transcripts from New Kepler University passed without comment, and she was assigned to Residential Block 7, Room 2847. Her quarters were spacious by ship standards but modest compared to what she might have expected. A single bed, desk, and holographic interface filled most of the space, with a small window offering a view of the Academy's inner courtyard. Maya unpacked her belongings quickly, aware that orientation would begin in just a few hours. The Academy's central plaza buzzed with activity as hundreds of new students gathered for the welcome ceremony. Maya had researched the major species she'd encounter, but seeing them all together was overwhelming. Tall ethereal voidlings mingled with compact mechanical-looking forge-born. Gaseous nebula dancers maintained their forms in specialized containment suits while communicating through color changes, visible even through their environmental barriers. Dean Corvash took the stage, her Thanagarian features commanding immediate attention. She was ancient even by her species standards, having served at the Academy for over 2 centuries. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly across the plaza without amplification. "Students of the Galactic Synthesis Academy," she began, "you represent the finest minds your species have to offer. You are here not just to learn, but to forge the future of our galaxy. The next 4 years will challenge everything you think you know about science, culture, and reality itself." Maya listened intently as Dean Corvash outlined the Academy's expectations. Academic excellence was just the beginning. Students were expected to collaborate across species lines, participate in groundbreaking research, and demonstrate the kind of innovative thinking that could solve galactic-scale problems. "Your first classes begin tomorrow," the dean continued. "But tonight we encourage you to explore, to meet your fellow students, and to begin forming the connections that will last throughout your careers. Remember, diversity of thought is our greatest strength. Each species brings unique perspectives that, when combined, allow us to achieve the impossible." The ceremony concluded with the traditional lighting of knowledge, where representatives from each major species contributed to a holographic flame that would burn throughout the academic year. Maya watched as dozens of beings stepped forward, each adding their own cultural element to the growing display of light and energy. After the ceremony, students naturally clustered into groups. Maya noticed that many gravitated toward others of their own species, though some mixed groups were forming around shared academic interests. She approached a gathering of theoretical physics students, hoping to blend in while gathering information about her program. "You must be Kira," said a tall, graceful being with flowing tendrils instead of hair. "I'm Lysander from the Chorus Worlds." "I saw your entrance scores were quite remarkable." Maya felt her pulse quicken. "Thank you. I'm looking forward to the coursework." "Indeed." Professor Karath mentioned that we have someone in our cohort who scored perfect marks on the theoretical framework assessment. That hasn't happened in 15 years. Lysander's large luminous eyes studied Maya with interest. "Your hybrid background must give you unique insights into physical laws." Before Maya could respond, another student joined the conversation. This one was clearly hegemony-born, with the characteristic metallic skin modifications and neural interface ports visible at his temples. "Dr. Thane is excited about this year's group," he said without preamble. "Apparently we have the highest aggregate problem-solving scores in Academy history. He's planning to start us on graduate-level coursework immediately." Maya's stomach tightened. Graduate-level work would be more scrutinized, more challenging to fake if her knowledge gaps became apparent. "That sounds intense." "It should be fascinating," Lysander agreed. "I've heard rumors that this year's theoretical physics cohort will be working on classified projects. Something about spatial distortion research." The conversation continued, but Maya's attention was caught by a group of students near the plaza's edge. Unlike the others, they weren't socializing. Instead, they seemed to be scanning the crowd, their postures suggesting security or intelligence training rather than academic pursuit. One of them, a Mordian with the characteristic ridge patterns of a military family, was definitely watching her. Maya excused herself from the physics discussion and began moving through the crowd, trying to appear casual while keeping track of the watchers. She had expected Academy security to be thorough, but this felt different. more targeted. As she reached the plaza's outer ring, Maya overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. "Genetic masking is sophisticated but not perfect," a female voice was saying. "The probability matrices suggest artificial modification." "Agreed," replied a deeper voice. "The question is whether it's for cosmetic reasons or concealment of something more significant." Maya forced herself to keep walking, but her mind raced. Someone suspected her modifications weren't just the result of her supposed hybrid heritage. If they investigated further, her true identity wouldn't remain hidden for long. She needed allies, and she needed them quickly. The Academy might represent humanity's greatest opportunity for redemption, but it could just as easily become Maya's trap. As she returned to her quarters that night, Maya began planning not just for her studies but for survival. The galaxy was about to test whether a human could truly belong among its elite. Maya intended to prove that humanity deserved a second chance, even if it cost her everything. But first she had to figure out who was watching her, and why they seemed so interested in her genetic makeup. Tomorrow would bring her first classes, her first real test of whether she could maintain her deception while excelling at the galaxy's most demanding academic institution. Maya fell asleep reviewing her cover story and preparing for the challenges ahead, unaware that her presence had already been noted by forces that could either make her mission possible or ensure its spectacular failure. Maya's first class was Fundamental Forces and Reality Manipulation, taught by Professor Karath in a lecture hall that defied conventional geometry. The Zalani professor's crystalline form refracted light in patterns that seemed to respond to the mathematical concepts being discussed, creating a visual representation of complex theoretical frameworks. "Today we begin with the basic assumption that reality is malleable," Professor Karath announced, her voice resonating through both air and the crystalline growths that served as the room's acoustic enhancement system. "Who can tell me why this assumption has proven problematic for certain species?" Several hands went up, including tentacles, manipulator arms, and various other appendages that served similar functions across species. Maya kept her hand down, preferring to observe before participating. A voidling near the front answered first, their translucent form shimmering as they spoke. "Species with rigid cognitive structures find it difficult to accept that physical laws can be negotiated with rather than simply obeyed." "Excellent. And why might this be advantageous in some circumstances?" Professor Karath's form brightened slightly, indicating approval. Maya found herself raising her hand before she realized it. "Because rigid thinking patterns prevent catastrophic reality distortions. Species that can manipulate fundamental forces too easily risk uncontrolled alterations to spacetime." The professor's attention focused on Maya with sudden intensity. "Interesting perspective, Miss Veltar. Your comment suggests familiarity with historical incidents of reality manipulation gone wrong. Can you provide an example?" Maya's heart raced. She had been thinking of the Prometheus incident, humanity's disastrous attempt to create an artificial black hole for energy generation. But she couldn't reference that without revealing knowledge that her supposed species shouldn't possess. "The hegemony's early experiments with dimensional folding," she said instead, recalling something she'd read in Academy preparatory materials. Their rigid mathematical approach initially prevented them from making the intuitive leaps necessary for successful spatial manipulation, but it also saved them from several potential reality cascade failures. Professor Karath's form cycled through colors that Maya didn't recognize. A thoughtful analysis, though incomplete. The real lesson of hegemony dimensional research is that successful reality manipulation requires a balance between intuitive flexibility and analytical rigor. Pure logic fails because the universe isn't purely logical. Pure intuition fails because the universe isn't purely responsive to will. The lecture continued, covering theoretical frameworks that made Maya's head spin. Reality manipulation was apparently a standard part of galactic science, treated with the same matter-of-fact approach that humans might have once applied to chemistry or physics. The implications were staggering. No wonder humanity had been quarantined if their approach to these forces had been as reckless as the historical records suggested. After class, Maya was approached by one of her fellow students, a being she hadn't encountered before. They appeared roughly humanoid, but with skin that seemed to contain swirling galaxies, as if the cosmos itself had been compressed into biological form. "I'm Nexus," they said, their voice seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I was intrigued by your response in class. Most students don't demonstrate such awareness of the dangers inherent in reality manipulation. Thank you, Maya replied carefully. I've always been interested in the intersection between theoretical frameworks and practical limitations. Indeed, your cognitive patterns are quite unusual for a Centaurian vegan hybrid. I'm something of a specialist in xenopsychology, and I must say, your thought processes show characteristics I haven't encountered before. Maya felt the familiar chill of discovery threatening her cover. My upbringing was somewhat unconventional. My parents encouraged me to think outside traditional species-based cognitive frameworks. Nexus studied her with what might have been eyes, though it was difficult to tell where the cosmic patterns in their skin ended and their sensory organs began. How fascinating. I don't suppose you'd be interested in participating in a research project I'm conducting? I'm studying cognitive adaptation in mixed heritage individuals. I appreciate the offer, but I think I'll need to focus on my coursework for now, Maya said, backing away slightly. Perhaps later in the semester. Of course. But do consider it. Your unique perspective could contribute significantly to our understanding of consciousness and species identity. Maya excused herself and hurried to her next class, but the encounter left her deeply unsettled. Nexus clearly suspected something unusual about her cognitive patterns. If they investigated further, they might discover that her thought processes weren't just unusual for a hybrid, but completely unknown to galactic science. Her second class was Advanced Quantum Mechanics with Dr. Thane, the hegemony professor her fellow physics students had mentioned. The classroom was more conventional, though the equations floating in holographic displays around the room were anything but simple. Dr. Thane was an imposing figure, his metallic skin modifications gleaming under the laboratory lights. Neural interface ports at his temples flickered with data streams as he accessed information faster than most beings could think. Quantum mechanics, he began without preamble, is the foundation upon which all advanced technologies are built. Today we will explore probability cascades and their applications to faster-than-light communication. The lecture was dense and complex, covering material that Maya had only touched on during her self-directed studies. But as Dr. Thane worked through the mathematical proofs, something extraordinary happened. Maya began to see patterns that the other students seemed to miss. When Dr. Thane presented a problem involving quantum entanglement across galactic distances, Maya found herself working through the solution before he had finished explaining the parameters. The answer came to her not through careful calculation, but through an intuitive understanding of how quantum systems behaved under extreme conditions. Miss Veltar, Dr. Thane said suddenly, his interface ports flickering more rapidly. You appear to have reached a conclusion. Would you care to share it with the class? Maya hesitated. The solution she had arrived at was elegant but unconventional, requiring assumptions that most galactic species would consider impossible. But Dr. Thane was waiting and the other students were watching. The problem assumes that quantum entanglement degrades linearly with distance, she said carefully. But if we consider that spacetime itself has quantum properties, then entanglement might actually strengthen under certain conditions. The apparent impossibility of maintaining coherence across galactic distances disappears. If we accept that the universe wants quantum systems to remain connected, the room fell silent. Dr. Thane's interface port stopped flickering entirely. He paused. Accessing databases with visible effort. That's theoretically sound, but it requires a fundamental reimagining of quantum mechanics that no known species has achieved. The mathematical framework would be solvable, Maya finished, if you approach it from the perspective that consciousness and quantum mechanics are fundamentally linked. The universe responds to observation not just because measurement affects quantum systems, but because awareness itself is a quantum phenomenon. Dr. Thane stared at her for a long moment. Miss Veltar, that interpretation has been proposed before, but it was dismissed because it implies that reality is partially subjective. No scientific framework can be built on such unstable foundations. Unless subjectivity itself follows predictable patterns, Maya replied, her excitement overriding her caution. If consciousness operates according to quantum principles, then subjective reality becomes as measurable as any other physical force. The other students were looking at Maya with a mixture of awe and confusion. She realized she had gone too far, revealed too much of the human approach to understanding the universe. While other species had developed specialized intelligence, Humans had always tried to bridge the gap between analytical thinking and intuitive understanding. "We'll continue this discussion in my office after class," Dr. Thane said, his tone suggesting both interest and suspicion. "For now, let's move on to conventional applications of quantum mechanics." Maya spent the rest of the class trying to fade into the background, but she could feel the attention of her fellow students. Word would spread quickly through the academy's social networks. The mysterious hybrid student who thought about quantum mechanics in ways that challenged fundamental assumptions would become a topic of conversation. That evening, Maya sat in her quarters reviewing the day's events. She had learned two important things. First, that galactic science was far more advanced than humanity had ever achieved, incorporating reality manipulation and consciousness studies as standard curricula. Second, that human cognitive flexibility might actually be an advantage in these advanced fields, allowing for the kind of intuitive leaps that more specialized species found difficult. But she had also attracted attention from both a xenopsychology specialist and an advanced physics professor. Each was interested in her unusual thought patterns for different reasons, and both could potentially discover her true nature if they investigated too deeply. Dr. Thane's office was a testament to hegemony precision. Every surface was perfectly organized with holographic displays showing complex equations that shifted and evolved in real time. The professor himself sat behind a desk that seemed to be carved from a single piece of crystallized energy, his metallic features reflecting the dancing mathematics that surrounded them. "Miss Veltar," he began without preamble, "your insights yesterday were remarkable. Also troubling." Maya took the seat across from him, trying to project confidence despite her racing heart. "Troubling? Your approach to quantum consciousness theory parallels classified research that was abandoned decades ago, research that was deemed too dangerous to continue." Dr. Thane's interface ports flickered as he accessed secure databases. The last time someone proposed similar theories, the consequences were significant. Maya forced herself to remain calm. "I'm not familiar with that historical incident. My ideas came from trying to reconcile consciousness studies with quantum mechanics." "Of course you're not familiar with it," Dr. Thane said, his tone carrying subtle suspicion. "The incident was classified by galactic security. Only researchers with the highest clearance levels even know it occurred." He leaned forward, studying Maya's face. "Tell me about your background. Your academic records from New Kepler University are impressive, but they don't explain this level of theoretical sophistication." Maya had prepared for this question, but under Dr. Thane's intense scrutiny, her carefully constructed cover story felt suddenly fragile. "My parents were both researchers before they settled on New Kepler. They encouraged independent thinking from an early age." "What kind of researchers?" "Xenobiology and theoretical physics. They met at a conference on consciousness studies." The lies came smoothly, built on fragments of truth about her adoptive parents' actual backgrounds. Dr. Thane's interface ports cycled through rapid data queries. "I've been unable to locate any records of Centaurian-Vegan researchers working in consciousness studies during the relevant time period." Maya's pulse quickened. They published under different names due to political pressure. Mixed species research collaborations weren't always welcome in academic circles. Indeed. Dr. Thane stood and walked to one of his holographic displays, manipulating the equations with practiced ease. "Miss Veltar, I'm going to show you something that's classified at the highest levels. The reason your theories concern me becomes clear when you understand what happened the last time someone attempted to bridge consciousness and quantum mechanics." The display shifted, showing a three-dimensional map of space with a glaring void where several star systems should have been. 32 years ago, a species attempted to create what they called a consciousness-driven reality engine. They believed, as you suggested, that awareness could directly manipulate quantum systems on a macroscopic scale. Maya stared at the display, recognizing the star pattern. This was the Sol system and its immediate neighbors, but something was wrong. The data showed empty space where she knew human colonies had once existed. The experiment succeeded beyond their wildest expectations, Dr. Thane continued. They managed to create localized distortions in space-time itself. But they couldn't control it. The consciousness-quantum interaction created a feedback loop that nearly tore holes in reality. 17 systems were evacuated before the effect could be contained. What happened to the species responsible? Maya asked, though she already knew the answer. Quarantined indefinitely. They called themselves humans, and they possessed exactly the kind of cognitive flexibility you demonstrated yesterday. The ability to make intuitive leaps that bridge seemingly incompatible concepts. Dr. Thane turned back to Maya, his gaze piercing. Now do you understand why your theories concern me? Maya felt the weight of galactic history pressing down on her. The Prometheus incident hadn't just been a failed experiment. It had been a near-catastrophic demonstration of humanity's dangerous potential. But there was something else in Dr. Thane's story. Something that didn't match what she'd been told. You said 17 systems were evacuated, she said carefully. What happened to the humans' home system? Still quarantined. The reality distortions there were too severe to risk intervention. For all we know, they're still trying to contain whatever they unleashed. Maya's blood ran cold. According to Dr. Thane, the Sol system wasn't just quarantined. It was considered too dangerous to even approach. But Maya knew that wasn't true. She had been born there, had lived there until she was 12. The reality distortions couldn't be as severe as galactic records suggested, unless the galactic authorities were lying about the extent of the damage, or unless they were using the threat of ongoing instability to justify maintaining the quarantine long after it was necessary. Professor, Maya said, choosing her words carefully, has anyone actually verified the current state of the quarantined systems? If the original experiment was contained, the long-term effects might be less severe than initially projected. Dr. Thane's interface ports flickered rapidly. That's classified beyond your clearance level. Why do you ask? Academic curiosity. If consciousness can affect quantum systems, then the reverse might also be true. Quantum instability could affect consciousness. There might be ways to help the quarantine population recover from any psychological effects. Miss Veltar, Dr. Thane said slowly, your continued interest in this topic is concerning. Combined with your unusual cognitive patterns and theoretical insights, it raises questions about your true background. Maya felt her carefully constructed identity beginning to crumble, but instead of panic, she felt a strange sense of liberation. She was tired of hiding, tired of pretending to be something she wasn't. What if, she said, meeting Dr. Thane's gaze directly, what if the consciousness quantum interaction isn't inherently dangerous? What if the problem was lack of understanding, not fundamental incompatibility? Explain. You said the humans created a feedback loop because they couldn't control the effect. But what if control was never the answer? What if the key is learning to work with consciousness quantum systems instead of trying to dominate them? Dr. Thane stared at her for a long moment. Then he activated a privacy field around his office, ensuring their conversation couldn't be monitored. Miss Veltar, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I want a direct answer. Are you human? Maya felt the moment of truth arriving. She could continue the deception, try to convince Dr. Thane that her insights came from her hybrid heritage, or she could trust him with the truth and hope that her academic performance had earned his respect. Yes, she said simply. Dr. Thane nodded slowly, as if confirming something he had already suspected. How did you escape the quarantine? My parents got me out when I was young. I've been living under false identity ever since. Maya waited for him to call security, to have her arrested or expelled. Instead, Dr. Thane deactivated several monitoring systems in his office. Miss Veltar, or whatever your real name is, you're not the first human I've encountered. Maya blinked in surprise. What? The galactic authorities have been quietly recruiting human refugees for years. Your species' cognitive flexibility makes you valuable for certain types of research. Dangerous research that other species are too specialized to pursue safely. I don't understand. The consciousness quantum interaction that caused the Prometheus incident, it wasn't entirely uncontrolled. Some of the effects were beneficial, revolutionary even, but the Galactic Council decided that the risks outweighed the benefits. Dr. Thane pulled up another classified display. What they didn't announce was that several breakthrough technologies were developed from human research before the quarantine was imposed. Maya stared at the technical specifications scrolling past. Advanced propulsion systems, reality stabilization fields, consciousness-based computing architectures, all derived from human experimentation with quantum consciousness theory. They've been using our research while keeping us locked away, she said, understanding dawning. Precisely, and now they want to continue that research, but safely. with humans who are properly trained in galactic safety protocols. Dr. Thane met her eyes. Miss Veltar, how would you like to help save your species? Maya felt her world shifting again. The academy wasn't just an educational opportunity. It was a recruitment center, a place where the galaxy's elite identified and cultivated the minds they needed for their most dangerous projects. What exactly are you proposing? She asked. Complete your education here. Excel in consciousness quantum research. Prove that humans can work safely with these technologies when properly trained. Then help us make contact with the quarantined populations and begin the process of reintegration. And if I refuse, then you continue your studies under your assumed identity, graduate, and disappear back into the outer rim. But your species remains quarantined, and the galaxy continues to benefit from human research without helping the humans who created it. Maya thought about her parents, still trapped in the Sol system, about the billions of humans who had been cut off from galactic civilization because of a single failed experiment, about the possibility of proving that humanity deserved a second chance. I'll do it, she said, but I have conditions. The research symposium was held in the Academy's Grand Amphitheater, a massive space that could accommodate thousands of attendees, both physically and through quantum-linked remote presence. Maya stood in the preparation area, watching as other students ran through their presentations. Each one represented years of specialized research, the kind of focused investigation that their species excelled at. Maya's presentation was different. Instead of diving deep into a narrow specialty, she had chosen to bridge multiple disciplines, combining consciousness studies, quantum mechanics, and reality manipulation theory in ways that no galactic species had attempted. It was ambitious to the point of recklessness, but it was also uniquely human in its scope. Miss Veltar, a voice called from behind her. Maya turned to see Nexus approaching, their cosmic patterned skins swirling with colors she had learned to associate with excitement. I've been looking forward to your presentation. The abstract you submitted was quite intriguing. Thank you, Maya replied, checking her holographic notes one final time. I hope the execution lives up to expectations. I'm particularly interested in your hypothesis about consciousness resonance fields. The mathematical framework suggests possibilities that most species would consider impossible. Nexus moved closer, their strange non-eyes studying Maya intently. Tell me, where did you develop such unconventional theories? Maya felt the familiar chill of suspicion but forced herself to remain calm. Independent research, mostly. I've always been interested in the connections between seemingly separate phenomena. Indeed, your cognitive patterns continue to fascinate me. I don't suppose you've reconsidered my offer to participate in my xenopsychology research? Perhaps after the symposium, Maya said diplomatically. I'd like to focus on my presentation for now. Nexus nodded, but their attention remained fixed on Maya with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. She was rescued by the announcement that presentations would begin in 10 minutes. Maya took her position in the queue, her heart racing despite her careful preparation. She had rehearsed her presentation countless times, but performing it in front of the galaxy's scientific elite was different from practicing alone in her quarters. One mistake, one revelation of her true thought processes, could expose everything. The presentations began with a voidling student demonstrating advances in ethereal physics, followed by a team of Forgeborn who had developed new approaches to mechanical consciousness. Each presentation was polished and impressive, representing the pinnacle of their respective species' scientific traditions. Then it was Maya's turn. She walked onto the stage, acutely aware of the thousands of beings watching her, both in person and through quantum links across the galaxy. The Academy's most distinguished faculty sat in the front rows, including Dean Corvash herself. Dr. Thane was there too, his expression carefully neutral, but his interface ports flickering with what Maya had learned to recognize as anticipation. Honored faculty and fellow students, Maya began, her voice carrying clearly through the amphitheater's acoustic enhancement system. Today I present research into what I call consciousness, resonance fields, a theoretical framework for understanding how awareness might interact with quantum reality on a universal scale. The first part of her presentation was carefully conventional, building on accepted galactic theories about consciousness and quantum mechanics. Maya watched the audience's reactions, noting the polite attention that suggested they found her work competent but not revolutionary. Then she moved to her original research. Current models assume that consciousness and quantum reality interact only at the microscopic level, she continued, bringing up a complex holographic display. But what if this interaction extends to macroscopic and even cosmic scales? What if consciousness doesn't just observe quantum reality, but participates in its creation? Murmurs began to ripple through the audience. Maya's display showed mathematical proofs that challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality itself. Consider the possibility that consciousness, resonance fields could explain several galactic mysteries, Maya said, warming to her subject. The spontaneous appearance of stable wormholes in regions with high population density. The correlation between collective belief systems and local physical constants. The phenomenon of reality storms in uninhabited space. Dr. Thane's interface ports were now cycling rapidly, and Maya could see other faculty members accessing databases with increasing urgency. Her theories were sound, but they required a way of thinking that most species found impossible. The implications are profound, Maya continued. If consciousness resonance fields exist, then reality itself might be more malleable than we've assumed. But this malleability would follow predictable patterns, governed by the collective consciousness of sapient beings in any given region of space. A hand went up in the audience. Dean Corvash herself was requesting permission to ask a question. Miss Veltar, the dean said, her ancient voice carrying easily through the amphitheater. Your theory is remarkable, but it requires a fundamental revision of our understanding of consciousness. What evidence do you offer that sapient awareness operates according to the principles you describe? Maya had prepared for this question, but answering it required her to reveal the full scope of her research. I've developed a mathematical model that treats consciousness as a quantum field, similar to electromagnetic or gravitational fields. The model predicts specific observable effects that should be measurable with existing technology. She brought up a new display showing experimental protocols and predicted results. The design was elegant and testable, requiring only equipment that the Academy already possessed. Furthermore, Maya continued, the model explains several historical anomalies in galactic science, including the reality distortions that occurred during the Prometheus incident 32 years ago. The amphitheater fell completely silent. Even mentioning the Prometheus incident was controversial, but using it as supporting evidence for a new theory was unprecedented. The official records describe the incident as an uncontrolled reality manipulation experiment, Maya said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. But my model suggests something different. The humans weren't trying to manipulate reality directly. They were attempting to demonstrate consciousness resonance effects, and they succeeded beyond their expectations. Faculty members throughout the audience were now accessing classified databases, their expressions ranging from fascination to alarm. Maya pressed on, knowing she had passed the point of no return. The consciousness resonance field they generated was unstable because they didn't understand the collective nature of the phenomenon. Individual consciousness can create localized effects, but stable reality manipulation requires coordination between multiple aware beings. The humans were working alone, creating a resonance cascade that they couldn't control. And your solution? Dean Corvash asked, her tone unreadable. Coordinated consciousness protocols. Multiple sapient beings working together to generate stable resonance fields. The effect would be controllable because it would require consensus rather than individual will. Maya's presentation concluded with a practical demonstration. Using volunteers from the audience, she guided them through a simple consciousness coordination exercise designed to create a minor resonance effect. Nothing dangerous, just a small alteration to the local gravitational field that would be barely detectable. The volunteers followed her instructions, focusing their awareness on a specific point in space, while maintaining mental connection with each other. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Academy's gravitational sensors began registering anomalous readings. A small but measurable distortion had appeared exactly where Maya had predicted, lasting for 30 seconds before fading naturally. The amphitheater erupted in excited discussion. Maya had just demonstrated controlled reality manipulation, using nothing but coordinated consciousness, proving that her theories weren't just mathematical abstractions. But in the front row, Maya noticed several faculty members engaged in urgent whispered conversations. Their expressions suggested more than scientific excitement. They looked worried, even frightened. As the presentation session concluded, Maya was approached by dozens of researchers wanting to discuss her work. But before she could engage with any of them, Dean Corvash herself appeared at her side. "Miss Veltar," the dean said quietly, "I need you to come with me immediately. We have urgent matters to discuss." Maya followed the dean through corridors she had never seen before, deep into the academy's administrative section. Her triumph was beginning to feel more like a trap as she realized the implications of what she had just accomplished. She had proven that consciousness could manipulate reality in controlled, measurable ways. But she had also demonstrated capabilities that the galaxy had spent 30 years trying to forget. Her success might save humanity, or it might condemn her to share their fate. The dean led her into a secure conference room where several figures were waiting. Maya recognized Dr. Thane, but the others were strangers. Their clothing and bearing suggested galactic security rather than academic positions. "Miss Veltar," Dean Corvash said, taking a seat across from Maya, "your presentation was remarkable. It was also terrifying." The silence that followed Maya's admission was deafening. Dean Corvash's ancient features remained impassive, but the security officials shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Dr. Thane watched the proceedings with calm interest, as if Maya's revelation was expected rather than shocking. "A human," repeated one of the security officials, a tall Mordian whose ridge patterns indicated high military rank. "At the academy, impossible." "Clearly not impossible," Dean Corvash said dryly. "Miss Veltar has been attending classes for months. Her academic performance has been exemplary." She turned to Maya. "I assume your documentation is fraudulent." "Yes," Maya replied, seeing no point in further deception. "My name is Maya Chen. I was born in the Sol system and lived there until I was 12. My adoptive parents helped me create the Kira Veltar identity." The Mordian security chief leaned forward aggressively. "This is a security breach of the highest magnitude. She should be arrested immediately and questioned about how she infiltrated academy systems." "Colonel Thex," Dr. Thane interjected smoothly, "might I suggest we focus on more important matters, such as the fact that she just demonstrated controlled reality manipulation in front of the galaxy's scientific elite?" Dean Corvash nodded slowly. "Dr. Thane is correct. Ms. Chen, your presentation proves several things simultaneously. First, that consciousness resonance fields are real and measurable. Second, that they can be controlled through coordination protocols. And third, that at least one human has survived outside the quarantine zone and acquired advanced scientific education." "Which raises obvious questions," Colonel Thex said. "How many other humans are hiding among us? What intelligence have they gathered? What other capabilities are they concealing?" Maya felt anger rising at the colonel's tone. "We're not spies or saboteurs. We're refugees trying to survive after being cut off from galactic civilization for crimes we didn't personally commit. The quarantine was imposed for good reason," the colonel shot back. "Your species proved they couldn't be trusted with advanced technology." "That's enough," Dean Corvash said firmly. "Colonel, your security concerns are noted, but this young woman has just demonstrated capabilities that could revolutionize our understanding of consciousness and reality. I suggest we focus on the implications rather than recriminations." Dr. Thane activated a holographic display, showing Maya's experimental results. The precision of the consciousness coordination she demonstrated suggests extensive practice. This isn't theoretical knowledge she gained from textbooks. Maya realized that continuing to hide information would only make things worse. "There are others. Human refugees scattered throughout the outer rim worlds. Most are hiding like I was, but some have been conducting research." "What kind of research?" Dr. Thane asked with obvious interest. "Consciousness studies primarily. We've been trying to understand what went wrong during the Prometheus incident, and we've been developing safer approaches to consciousness-reality interaction." Dean Corvash exchanged glances with Dr. Thane. "Miss Chen, what do you know about the current state of the Sol system?" Maya hesitated. The information Dr. Thane had shared with her was classified, but these people clearly had high-level access. "I know the official reports claim it's still experiencing reality storms and dimensional instability. But I also know that's not entirely accurate." "Explain." "The reality distortions were contained within 2 years of the initial incident. The Sol system has been stable for decades. The quarantine is maintained primarily for political reasons, not safety concerns." Colonel Thex looked shocked, but Dean Corvash merely nodded. Your information is correct. The continued quarantine has been a matter of policy rather than necessity. Then why? Maya asked, her voice tight with emotion. Why keep billions of people isolated from galactic civilization? Because, Dr. Thane said quietly, the Galactic Council was afraid. Your species demonstrated capabilities that challenge the fundamental order of galactic society. Rather than risk integration, they chose containment. Dean Corvash stood and walked to the conference room's window, gazing out at the Academy's sprawling campus. The truth is, Miss Chen, that your presentation today has forced a decision that the Galactic Council has been avoiding for 30 years. Your demonstration proved that humans can control consciousness-reality interactions safely when properly trained, which means the justification for continued quarantine has disappeared, Dr. Thane added. Maya felt a surge of hope. Then you'll recommend ending the quarantine? It's not that simple, Colonel Theck said. Integrating a quarantined species into galactic society requires unanimous council approval. Many member species still view humans as dangerous. However, Dean Corvash continued, turning back to face the group, your success here provides an opportunity. The Academy has significant influence with the Galactic Council. If we can demonstrate that humans can be safely integrated into advanced scientific research, it would provide powerful evidence for ending the quarantine. Maya leaned forward eagerly. What are you proposing? Complete your education here, Dr. Thane said. Publicly as a human. Let the galaxy see that your species can contribute to galactic science without causing catastrophic incidents. You want me to be a test case? Maya realized. More than that, Dean Corvash said. We want you to be an ambassador. The first human to graduate from the Academy in over 30 years. Your success would demonstrate that humanity deserves a place in galactic society. Maya felt the weight of her species' future settling on her shoulders once again. And if I fail? If something goes wrong? Then the quarantine continues indefinitely, Colonel Theck said bluntly. Your species remains isolated and this conversation never happened. Maya thought about her parents still trapped in the Sol system, about the billions of humans who had been denied access to galactic civilization, about the refugees scattered across the outer rim, hiding their identities and living in fear of discovery. I'll do it, she said, but I have conditions. Dean Corvash smiled, the first genuine warmth Maya had seen from her. I would expect nothing less. What are your terms? First, I want contact established with the Sol system. If I'm going to represent humanity, I need to coordinate with our leaders there. Second, I want protection for other human refugees. No hunting expeditions to root out people who are already integrated into galactic society. Third, I want a formal timeline for quarantine review, not vague promises of future consideration. Reasonable requests, Dr. Thane said, though implementing them will require careful negotiation with the Galactic Council. There's one more thing, Maya said. I want to continue my consciousness resonance research. If we're going to prove that humans can contribute to galactic science, we need to do more than just avoid causing disasters. We need to create breakthroughs that benefit everyone. Dean Corvash nodded approvingly. Ambitious. And exactly the kind of thinking we need. Very well, Miss Chen. You'll continue your studies here, but openly as a human. We'll arrange for appropriate documentation and security clearances. Your research will be supported and protected. And monitored, Colonel Thex added grimly. Of course, Maya said. I wouldn't expect anything less. Over the following months, Maya's status changed dramatically. No longer hiding her identity, she became a celebrity of sorts at the Academy. The first human student in decades, she drew attention from researchers across the galaxy who were curious about human cognitive capabilities. Her consciousness resonance research progressed rapidly with official support and access to classified databases. Working with Dr. Thane and a team of volunteers from multiple species, Maya developed practical applications for coordinated consciousness fields, safe faster-than-light communication, precise reality stabilization, even limited healing applications. Each breakthrough was carefully documented and shared with the Galactic Council, building a case for human reintegration. Maya's successes demonstrated that human cognitive flexibility, properly channeled, could solve problems that had puzzled galactic science for centuries. The contact with the Sol system that Dean Corvash had promised finally came through 6 months after Maya's revelation. The first communications in 30 years revealed a human civilization that had not only survived the quarantine but thrived. They had used their isolation to develop even more sophisticated approaches to consciousness-reality interaction, creating technologies that seemed almost magical by galactic standards. Maya found herself serving as a bridge between two civilizations that had grown apart, translating human innovations into forms that galactic species could understand and accept. Her position was unique and sometimes precarious, but she was finally doing what she had always dreamed of, proving that humanity deserved its place among the stars. As her graduation approached, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. She had entered the academy as a frightened refugee hiding her identity. She would leave as humanity's first official ambassador to galactic society in over 3 decades. The quarantine wouldn't end immediately. Political processes moved slowly even in advanced civilizations. But Maya had proven that change was possible. Humanity's exile was no longer permanent, and their return to galactic society was no longer a distant dream.